Good day, YouTube. This is Blazer Guy 1983 coming at you with another video. Today we're going to be doing front brake pads and rotors on my 2011 Nissan Altima. This is the 2.5 liter SL model, and the brake of choice that I went with today would be the PowerStop Evolution. These guys here have had a lot of good reviews online, and I've also seen a lot of testimonials from different YouTubers that have used these, including South Main Auto, Erico up there in New York, and I really feel like this would be a good choice for my vehicle, considering I live in a very hilly terrain and there's a lot of stop and go traffic in my area. Now, in addition to that, we live in the Rust Belt, so I felt that this would also be a good choice because the rotors that they use typically are coated with zinc and they stand against corrosion and rust a lot longer than your normal everyday rotor. So I'm kind of excited about that. So these are the ceramic Evolutions power stops here that we got, and these guys here, like I said, ordered them online, and they come with some very specific instructions, which I will take a picture of and send this into the video here whenever I go to edit it. It comes with the clips for the caliper bracket that the pads ride on, so new stainless steel clips. Also comes with the little boots, which is the fittings that go over the slide pins to help keep the grease in and the moisture out on the slide pins, as well as, if you look here, it even comes with the little stoppers that go on the pins themselves, the little rubber insulators, and that helps against noise and vibration on one of the slide pins. And then of course they give you some grease here, little packaged grease. I'll just be using my own since I have a bigger one. And then of course the ceramic pads. So we got that in the kit. I'm going to put all this aside. I just want to point out that these guys are not a sponsor. I bought all this with my own money. Found a really good mail-in rebate and went ahead and purchased them. Now the rotors, the first thing I noticed right away about the rotors was that they were significantly heavier, and I'm thinking that's because they're made with better material. I could be wrong, but they are the cross-drilled rotors. Comes in the kit with two. There's a right and a left one. They are different, so you want to make sure. For an example, this one here actually says front pass side, so you know this goes on the passenger side, and it's basically because of the way that the slots are carved into the rotor that you want to make sure they're spinning in the right direction. Really nice rotor, very heavy. Comes with both the driver and the passenger side, obviously. I'm only going to record one side because, let's be frank, it's going to be the same on both sides. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys set up, get some tools out, and go ahead and get this job going. I'm really excited about this, and can't wait to see how these power stops perform against the previous rotors that I've had on this vehicle. Okay, to start off, we're going to go ahead and, which I've already done so, is jack up your vehicle and support it with jack stands. Make sure that it's secured. You don't want it falling on you. It is very dangerous jacking up vehicles, to make sure you're following your owner's manual and jacking it up at the correct points in which you're supposed to put a floor jack. I went ahead and put jack stands under the vehicle to support it. Next thing I'm going to do is, because we're going to be compressing the caliper, I went ahead under the hood, this is the driver's side, and I loosened the cap. You don't need to take it all the way off because you don't want debris falling in there. Went ahead and loosened the brake reservoir cap, which is located directly behind the air filter compartment in the air intake hose. And with the vehicle jacked up, if you have locking lug nuts, which my vehicle does, make sure that before you start the job, you go ahead and try to find these ahead of time. If your mechanic's doing this, get these out. They'll make their life so much better. In addition to this, you may find that if you're not using air tools like I am, that it might be beneficial, before you completely take the weight off the tire of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicle off the wheel, to make sure that you crack these loose ahead of time, so that way if they're too tight and you're having trouble getting them loose, the wheel doesn't just keep spinning on you. So it does help give you a little bit of a brace to crack these loose ahead of time. They are 22 millimeter. I have the luxury of air tools, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get ripping into this. Okay, so we're ready to go. We're going to go ahead and peel this wheel off here. You're gonna, if you're listening on earphones, just be ready for a noise alert. Got my 22 millimeter here. Put these in a safe place because you obviously will need to reinstall these guys later. Put my lock aside. These sockets, I got this on Amazon. It's a DAKCOS. No idea, but it's got this plastic sleeve on here. It keeps from marring up your wheels if you're interested. Okay, so got those loose. Go ahead and take your wheel off and set it aside. I'm going to slide this guy over here out of the way. And the next thing you're going to be presented with is going to be your braking system. So this is obviously your rotor, this is your caliper, and these are your pads. Now these brakes aren't technically bad, but the rotors are warped, and I really don't care for the braking distance and the feel that these particular rotors have. This is the Hart, H-A-R-T brand that I put on a little over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. So I decided I'm going to go with PowerStops and see if I get a little better braking performance. So if you have both wheels off the ground, this should be easy to do. We're going to go ahead and just grab a hold of it. Make sure this stuff's cool, obviously. This car's been sitting overnight. We're going to go ahead and turn this out like this. If it's too hard to turn by hand like this, you can always get in and turn the wheel to the left. This is the driver's side. This is going to give you access to the fasteners in which that we need to get to in order to change these brakes. Usually what I like to do first is I like to peel off these caliper slide bolts, slide pins first, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe they are 14 millimeter. And we'll go ahead and grab one of those. I double check here, and I am correct. It's been a while since I did brakes, so let's go on this particular vehicle, I should say anyway. I do brakes all the time, as you can tell from my channel. Let's go ahead and pop this guy on the air tool, and we'll go ahead and just throw this on there and hit it. Noise alert. Do the bottom one. Now you want to take these out, sit them to the side. You will need to reuse these. I'm going to clean those up as well in the wire wheel. So what this should do now is this should enable you to get your caliper off. Now sometimes these calipers usually come off without a fight because they're in good working order. Sometimes what you may need to do is get in here in your rotor and actually pull back a little bit on it. And what I'm doing is actually pulling this way, is pulling the piston in, so it'll take some of the bite off the pad so you can get this off a little more easier. I also have one of these really cool hooks that I purchased on Amazon. Anybody really carries them, but this hook gives you an option to hang the caliper up so you're not resting it on the brake hose. That's not recommended. So go ahead and put it in there. Calipers look like they're in great shape, as I suspect, because I do service these brakes. I'm just going to hang it up here, inside here on the coil spring. That's just going to kind of get everything out of the way for us. If you serviced your brakes properly the last time, you'll find that they should just come out nice and easy. There is still a ton of meat on these. I'll probably actually put these brakes aside in case I need to, because they're so evenly worn. I might actually hang on to them and clean them and put them away, so that if these rotors, these PowerStop rotors, hold up, I may actually just reuse these pads down the road if those rotors are in still good shape. So I'll go ahead and peel those off. They should come out easily. If not, you may have to get in there and pop them out with a screwdriver. That's typical from a vehicle that the brakes are kind of hanging up and locked up. From rust jacking, I live up here in Pittsburgh, so we're in the Rust Belt, and you'll have a lot of that. Next thing I like to do is just go ahead and pop these clips out of here. These are the stainless steel hardware that the pads actually sit on. Go ahead and pull that out, put that aside, and go ahead and pull this one out. Really don't see any reason to reuse these or save these, but I'll just put them to the side, just get them out of the way for now. So these are your slider pins. These are actually really stiff, so I'm glad I'm doing this. See, I can barely turn that. We're going to clean out these ports inside the bracket, inside the garage here momentarily, but first we're going to go ahead and get this bracket off. I'm going to take a wild guess that that bracket uses a 21 millimeter. I am wrong. 22 is probably what it uses. So we're going to try that. I don't know if this impact will take this off. I may have to get a breaker bar. I'll try it first, and then if not, I'll grab a breaker bar to get these loose. Sometimes it's easier to put the socket on your impact tool. There we go. Now I don't know if this will work, but we'll give it a try and see if this little gun can take these off. Noise alert. And it looks like they will. Good. Grab this top one. Okay, now be careful when you do this, the bracket doesn't come down and bite you in the foot. These have a little washer on them, so like I said, I'm going to take these in, I'm going to wire wheel these both in the garage, clean them up. When we reinstall them, we're going to use a little bit of Loctite on them. Put those in my magnetic dish. Now you should be able to pull this bracket off. The next thing we're going to need to do is service this bracket. This is one of the most important part of doing a brake job, especially when you live in the Northeast or in the Rust Belt. Very much so need to pay attention to these areas right here in which the brake pad rides. These areas tend to build up a lot of grime and brake dust and dirt, as well as rust and corrosion. That will cause a squeeze on the ears of your pads. So I mean, you want your pads to be able to ride nice and smooth and be able to move in and out of their little passages, because if they don't, they'll hang up and they'll wear out prematurely. They can cause uneven brake wear. Your actual brake might hang up altogether on the one side, if not both. Also, the second most important thing is these sliders, like this one here, is not even barely moving. I need to service that. Very important that these sliders move freely and have proper lubrication. And also a key is not too much lubrication. You can actually cause these to hang up if you put too much lubrication on them. They'll almost create like a piston effect where they can't allow the air to burp out. So we're going to service this in the garage. We're going to go ahead and take off our brake rotor, and I'm going to put this aside. And those two back fasteners, like I said, they were 22. Now everything on this vehicle, as you can tell from this picture here, is actually in really good shape, and that's because, like I said, I do fluid film this vehicle every year. These wheel bearings are actually fairly new. They're only about roughly 1.5 to 2 years old at this point, and they had a rust protection already sprayed on them. So you can see the hub finish here is still nice and clean. All I'll need to do with this is clean it with a little brake clean, wipe it off with a paper towel, and I like to spray either fluid film or blaster surface shield on there, and that just keeps all this from corroding. As you can see, this backing plate is still in phenomenal shape, and that's because I fluid film it every time I do brakes, and that helps keep everything from corroding and rusting on this vehicle. So before we do any of that, I'm going to go ahead and spray this down with some brake clean, and then that's just going to help, like I said, get some of this big stuff off. We'll just give it a quick light mist here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just getting some of the big stuff off here. I'm not even worried about too much around here, because this area around here, I'm just going to re-fluid film it anyway, and there's no big rocks or anything there. So this is just so we can put some fresh fluid film on it, is why I'm doing this. Okay, and I'll just let that drip, and then I'll get that with a paper towel here shortly. Next, we're going to go head down here and work on this bracket in the garage. Okay, we're inside my very messy garage here. Please forgive the mess. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get these slide pins out, because we need to service those. So I just grabbed some vice grips here, and I'm going to see if I can get this one out that's kind of stuck. See if we can just kind of spin it. I'm not too worried about damaging the boots, because I'm going to be replacing them. So just remember which side goes where. So the 5/4 side is a side that has that little rubber bushing on the end of it there, the little stop there. I'm going to put that over. I'm going to grab this one here, pull that out, and then sit that there. And then we're going to clean these up. Just go ahead and pull these out, because we got new ones. What I'm going to do is grab some brake clean. I'm going to spray it into here and let this area inside these ports kind of dry out for a minute, and then we're going to hit it with one of these guys here, which is basically just a wire wheel in a drill, sort of, kind of. Okay, so we are ready to go. I went outside and I sprayed some just classic brake cleaner down into these orifices here to clean them out with any grease. I grabbed my drill here, and we're going to go and just run it through here. And what that's going to do is hopefully kind of open up the passages if there's any rust or old grease in there. Okay, looking good. So go ahead and put your drill aside. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I have a wire wheel on the end of this grinder here, and I'm going to go ahead and just clean up these areas the best I can here to try to make sure that everything's nice and clean. All this is just a file here. I'm just kind of going around inside here to break up some of this gunk that's in here, and I'll spray it out again with brake clean here shortly. Might have a better tool for this actually. I got a round file here. A lot of this stuff wouldn't even be necessary except for the fact that, like I said, if you live in a area like I do, which is the Rust Belt, these are extra steps that you actually usually end up having to take, unfortunately. Still a good idea to grease and service anything regardless of what climate you live in, but it is definitely a requirement, unfortunately, here. So a little bit of a noise alert. I'm going to take this wire wheel that's on a grinder here, and I'm going to just kind of clean up these surface areas right here real quick. One of the things I've found over the years with doing so many brake jobs is the more you do with this stuff, the better your brake job's going to turn out. So I'm go ahead and clean up these slide pins. I got to get this rubber boot off of here. Come on, guy. And like I said, they were nice enough to give us new rubber boots with this new kit, which is nice. So I'm just getting some of this old grease off there. Set that aside. Clean this one off too. Might need a little bit of brake clean in there to help break up some of that oils. And I'm going to hit these as well with this wire wheel here in a moment. But I'm going to move the bracket out of the way. I'm going to spray inside of here again just to get any of that loose stuff out for me running that wire wheel down in there. So, like I said, I'm just basically spraying inside here, getting loose. So, we're just going to kind of let that into that bucket over here that I have aside. All right, we're going to move your bracket over for a minute, and now we're going to service these slider pins. I'm going to put them in the vise here, lock them down really good so they don't go away. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit them with this wire wheel. You know, and if that's, you know, if they're not that bad, that's literally all you got to do. Now, there is a flat spot on these, so I'm going to crank these down somewhat lightly, and I'm going to do the top and around these edges here. Go ahead and do the other one now. Now, if I had a bench grinder, this would be a little bit more friendly and less noisy, obviously. That's actually in my list of things I need to get as a bench grinder. All right, do this slide pin. I just got to watch you don't hit this rubber thing here. Actually, I'll just take it off and put it aside for a minute. Same thing, we're going to flip it around. We don't want to squeeze down too hard on it because we don't want to put grooves in it. And you get it caught in there, you got to be careful. All right, we're good though. Set that aside. And make sure these are nice and cleaned up, and they look pretty good. I mean, there's a little bit of surface rust in here, but you know, nothing too crazy. I'm going to go ahead and spray my rag with some brake clean again and wipe these down. We want these nice and clean for reinstallation. Looking good. Put that aside. Make sure the other one's nice and clean. Clean that up. Put that aside. All right. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to set that aside. We're going to finish servicing our bracket here. So to do so, I'm going to put this in a vise like this. This kind of just keeps things held still for you. And then you're going to want to get, if you have a file, is your best option, is to kind of go in here and you want to clean these bosses out here where they ride. I'm sure I'm using the file wrong. For all you engineers out there that want to comment, I apologize. This just works for me. Get all edges of this. If you just hit this with a wire wheel, what can happen is you end up just polishing the rust and you don't actually accomplish anything then. So you want to, if you can, you want to use one of these files. So this is super important because this, like I said, is where your hardware for your brakes sit. And this isn't too bad. I've seen it way worse. And the reason why it's not that bad is because I serviced these brakes halfway through their life, in addition to having grease I had put on these when I first did it. I did the brakes too. So you don't want to take too much material off. We're just simply getting the rust off. So we're going to go in here and we're going to hit noise alert with this. So when you're done, I'll get this crack loose here, you're basically trying to achieve a look that looks like this. See how shiny that is? You don't want any rust, like I said, in there, because that's gonna cause it to hang up or eventually get worse. So now I went a little crazy with the wire wheel, but I'm just trying to make the brackets in general look better. This is completely optional, what I'm about to do now. This is what you see from the wheel outside. So I'm going to just run this in here and I'm just going to clean this up just to make it look a little nicer for appearance purposes, but this part's not necessary. Okay, so we are ready to service the slide pins now. So I went ahead and kind of jumped the gun. I started putting a little grease around the edges here, and what this does is it helps to keep this area from rusting around these pins. And we're just, like I was saying here, the grease we're using is going to be this brake lubricant by Silglide. So I got the new boots. They are a little different. They're a little odd actually, but the other thing I like to do is I like to take some grease and actually put it in around this orifice here, and this just keeps this area in here from getting rusted up on us here. So go ahead and just kind of work that around. If I had a brush, it'd probably work a little more effective. Now, if you recall, the 5.4 I said was the side that had this rubber bushing that we're going to reuse the one that's on the slide pin already, because the one that came with the kit unfortunately is too big. And the rubber bushings, or these little boots here, are definitely different. I'm not actually sure why they look so different, but we're going to try to use these ones, I guess, the best we can. I'm hoping I'm installing them correctly, because they do look a lot different from the ones that are supposed to be. Yeah. You know what, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like these ones that come with the kit, unfortunately. So I'm going to reuse the old ones since they're still in good working order. They're not like ripped or anything like that. I might just clean them up with a little brake clean here. But that is odd. I don't know why these they just don't look right, and they seem less quality, the ones that come with the kit, than the ones that are from the vehicle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go outside and I'm going to clean these up with some brake clean here. Actually, I might still have some over here, and hopefully this will, I'll just reuse these ones here. Yeah, so they're still pretty good. I don't have any reservations at all about reusing these. Kind of a shame I couldn't use the ones with the PowerStop kit. I mean, unless I'm doing something wrong, which is always plausible, they definitely are different, and I don't like the way they go in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop the originals back in, because we know they fit, and give that a little twist, and that'll help spread that grease around. Let me grab the other one here, wherever it may have gone. Here it is. I'm going to clean it with some brake clean too. It might make them swell a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I mean, kind of roll it a little bit to get some of the buildup off of it. Yeah. Fortunately, like I said, I don't, like I said, not to sound like a broken record, but I didn't really care. These aren't ripped in any way or torn, so I'm going to reuse the original factory ones and just go ahead and pop them back into the caliper here and give them a little spin, so that way that grease gets nice and shifted around. Okay, so now, if you recall, we cleaned up the pins. We're going to apply some lubricant here, more of the slide to this. You don't want too much, but you want enough that it's not, you know, going to be an issue and cause your brakes to hang up. All right, that's actually probably enough here. Maybe just a tad more, just for good measure on the end. And then this side goes, the one with the thing here goes on this side that we marked, or the 5.4 I remember from earlier. Let's go ahead and get that in there. You're just going to kind of burp it. Kind of give it a twist. I might have a little bit too much grease on it, because it's causing it to pop out. So what we'll do here is we're going to put a little trick here. We're going to push down here, and then we're going to put this in a vise temporarily when I'm all done getting all the clips in, and just let this squeezed in, and that'll help burp the air out of it. Let me grab the other slider pin here, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put some grease on it. It's nice and clean. Make sure that we go all the way up to the head of the bolt here, because we want to get that all nice and covered well, so that it doesn't rust. This is, like I said, a very, very important process of doing brakes. And I always like to just scrape the remainder off there. And that should push down in nicely. And this side works nicely. Twist it around. This side here, like I said, is going to need burped. It's going to eventually... getting better, but yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just don't want, these can act as a hydraulic if you put too much grease on this and it doesn't burp the air out of there and it pushes itself back up too far. This one seems good. This one has a little bit too much resistance. That could also be due to the bushing on that side too, but you don't want it acting as a hydraulic because it can actually cause pressure against your brakes, and when that heats up, it can actually lock your brakes up. So okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take this, we're going to spin it around here. We're going to put it into the vise this way for your viewing pleasure. And I'm going to take some more of this brake lubrication here, and I'm just going to run it inside where these areas that we shined up and cleaned all that rust out of. And what that does is that's going to help keep the rust from building back up as quickly, is the idea. You want to make sure you wipe off any excess on the inside so you don't get it on your brake rotor. When you go to reinstall the bracket, because it might bump up against it, and you don't want to get any grease on your new rotor because it will create what they call a hot spot. And okay. Go ahead and put our cap back on. And we got our hardware here that we're going to go ahead and reinstall now. So let's see here. It just kind of pops on like so, I believe, is all that's really to it. Grab the other one. That. And one I think is a little different. It's going to have these little things sticking out. There might be a preference on what side it goes on. I don't know if it matters, but this is the way I've always done it. So this just should pop in like that. Okay, so we are back out at the wheel here now. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a clean paper towel. I got my bracket prepared and ready to go for reinstallation. Take a little more of this brake clean here, and I'm just going to clean up around this hub. I want to make sure it's clean. Now, if this isn't clean, you may have to use like some kind of abrasive or whizzy wheel or something to kind of come in here and clean this up. You don't want any debris or dirt or gunk on here that is going to cause your rotor to not sit nice and flush on here, because that would obviously be a problem. So go ahead and clean that up real nice. Now, like I said, these have a corrosion treatment on them from the factory. These bearings, or wheel fit hub bearing faces here. So they're pretty clean. So I have no reserves about reinstalling stuff on there. So the next thing we're going to do here is we are going to go ahead and clean up your rotor here, which is right next to me. I'm going to hit it. I don't know if this is necessary for this brand, and somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, because I don't think there's any cosamine on these, which is stuff they put on them from the assembly line to keep them from corroding or rusting and shipping and packing. Just put some brake clean. I'm just wiping off the face of the rotor here. Looks like a little something on it. Go ahead and wipe this one off just to play it safe. I don't know if they come with a coating on there. It doesn't say, but I don't want to risk it. So put that aside. This is the one for the driver front side. Now I'm going to take, I like surface shield or fluid film, and we're just going to go ahead and give this guy a coating here. I go ahead and get it all, because if you get your bearing in there too, it'll help keep it from corroding. I like to get the backing plate real good. Even behind can't hurt. Alright, probably too much, but gets the job done. I just got some all over the rotor. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that back off with some brake clean again. That's my fault, not you getting it out of the way. Okay, so a nice clean rotor. Make sure your hands are nice and clean before you go grabbing it with your mitts. And we'll go ahead and lift it up here and get it popped back up on the hub. Boy, these things are heavy. A lot heavier than the factory ones. Like so. Slide that back, and then I like to take one of the lug nuts and just run it down, and that just simply keeps the rotor from moving around too much while you're trying to reinstall everything. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and service your caliper and get it ready. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and service your caliper now. I went and put this rag over the new rotor to protect it. We're going to clean this up. So usually you can just use a C-clamp. You can also reuse the old brake pad. I got this little piece of wood here that is going to enable me to compress this piston in. It doesn't have much travel because the pads actually weren't all that bad. All right. All I'm going to do is try to be let's get that tightened against there. But like I said, if you're just getting scrapping the old pads, you could technically just use the old pads to do this too, and just to take up space to compress this in. You basically just go until it stops, and then you just undo it like so, and then you just put this aside and you're done with your C-clamp. Now you can focus on cleaning all this up. So I'm going to put the caliper off to the side here and give it a quick initial spritz here to get it get all the big stuff off it. And that's just going to get all the big heavy duty stuff off, like the grease and brake dust and stuff. You also want to look inside your calipers, make sure there's no issues going on there as far as rust, like your pistons are rusting. Make sure your boot and everything's in good shape. Next, I like to take a wire brush and kind of clean up inside here, which I have one sitting here next to me. And basically this just cleans up any of the heavy stuff. Let me make sure you guys are still in a good view here. Just like to go ahead and just clean this up with a wire brush. Get all the junk and out of there. And then from there, we'll sit that back up there for just a second there. And I'm going to grab my air hose, and I got my Whizzy wheel here. And what this is going to do, we're just going to give it a quick little polish. Not sure where all this fluid film came from here. Get up there. So you're going to have a little bit of a noise alert here. And then we want to pay extra attention to these ears. clean up where the meets the surface for the bolt. Way everything fastens down nicely. Both sides. Looking good. Okay, so this caliper still looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice little rinse down here. Make the brake clean. Flip it over. Give it a little hose off. Beautiful. Let it drip dry here for a minute. I'm going to grab my hook and I'm going to hang it back up while it dries. Move these power tools out of the way. Make sure this is still nice and clean. Okay. All right. Make sure these bosses are clean. I'm gonna actually hit back here, these areas where the caliper bracket goes. Beautiful. That way those stay nice and flush. Okay, so without further ado, we can go ahead and reinstall our caliper bracket now, which we prepared in the garage for you guys. Make sure there's no grease leaking out anywhere here. Whoops, just popped the clip off. Okay, looking good. And I cleaned off my 2 caliper bracket bolts here, as you can remember from earlier, hopefully. We're going to reinstall them back with the bracket. Okay, so we're going to put some, got this thread lock here that seems to be pretty decent, Permatex. It's orange. Never tried it. I've seen other people use it. We're just going to put some on these threads here. Whoops, that was way too much. Perfect. Squirt it all over the place. Alright, I'm just gonna wipe that in there real nice. Okay, got that one ready to go. So go ahead and install that one first, since it's got the thread lock on it. Compressor should be kicking off here soon, guys. Okay, let's go ahead and disconnect that so it doesn't make a bunch of noise. Let's get this back on here. Slide that in like so. Go ahead and reinstall this bolt with the thread lock on it. Get that threading in like so. Okay. Oops, still not threading. Hold on, guys. Trying to give you guys optimal camera view. There we go. So that's going in. We'll get our other bolt, get some thread lock on this guy. There we go. Screwing that in. Hopefully you guys are seeing that good. Get that started. Sure, there's a torque setting for these. If you are inclined to know what that is, I would just go ahead and look that up for your own sake. I usually just go until they're nice and tight. Go ahead and run these down. Noise alert. I will go back through and retighten those by hand, so rest assured on that. All right, now we should be ready for some brake pads here. Let me go ahead and grab these from the kit. So far, seems like a pretty decent kit. The hardware is definitely a little odd. I don't quite understand why it doesn't seem to fit very great. And I had to reuse my old boots, because the ones that came with it, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the way they went on there. They just didn't sound like, they didn't seem as though they were going to seal very well. So I just decided at that point, you know, I don't want to bother taking a risk. So looks like it's got wear indicators on both sides. So as far as installation of these go, I'm pretty certain that we can go ahead and just pop these in. I don't believe there's a particular way. Yeah, see, these clips are definitely a little funny. Not sure if I like these. Try to get in here so I can see what's happening. Interesting. Let's see if this one should be the exact same, but there we go. Got it. So that's in. Go ahead and pop this side in. Actually, isn't this much of a struggle here? There we go. Okay, so you want your pads to move nice and free like this in the hardware. You don't want them to be bound up in any way. So now those are on there. What I like to do next is I like to go ahead and grab your caliper, and I will put some grease on the caliper as well, wherever it's going to be making any kind of contact. Okay, so I got our grease again here. I'm going to grab our caliper. It's just had enough time to dry off now from the cleaning I did. Do a quick visual. Now, one extra step that I like to do, and this is something that I do here in the rust belt, is I like to use some of the fluid film and spray it inside. This is optional, inside the bore of the piston, because that tends to be an area that rusts out, and I found doing this helps to prolong that. Okay, make sure your boot and everything's in good shape in here. And this is all, like I said, stuff that extra that you can do. It definitely helps when it comes to living in the climate that I live in. Some places you go, you may not even have to do all this, you know. And I'm going to put some here on these inner ears of this grease. Don't need a lot. Just enough to cover any surfaces that are going to come in contact with the brake pad, like so. What this does is it just overall just cuts down on the noise. Okay, now you want to make sure your hose is not tangled in any way. You want to make sure it's going the right direction, and go ahead and slide this over your brake pads, and you want to go ahead and make sure that it's lined up with this guy here. And now we can get those fasteners from earlier, which is the caliper things. Go ahead and slide that up into place and work them in. And like I said, I'm sure there is a torquing spec for all this stuff. I just use common sense. You're not sending it to the moon, obviously. And then using hand tools, make sure you cap off your thread lock so it doesn't dry out while you're doing this. Grab your hand tools. Like I said, if you want to look up the spec, you can. Got your 14. Just snug it. you may have to come in here with a wrench, an open-end wrench, to hold the inner sliders from moving. So you want to make sure your caliper is nice and free, which it does. It moves nicely. Brake pads look good. So that's good. Check and inspect your hose. Make sure it's in good condition. And then I always like to just go ahead and turn this out and take a clean area of your rag, spray some of this brake clean on it, and wherever you were working, give it another wipe on the rotor just to play it safe here. You don't want any hot spots on these new rotors. So once we get all this put back together, you're going to want to make sure you do your pad break-in procedure. Very, very much so emphasize on that, especially if you want these brakes to last. As far as PowerStop's procedures, which I will try to remember to put that up. Now, there's going to be some controversy when you're compressing these calipers not to push the fluid back up through the ABS system. There is some fear out there that it's not a thing that doesn't exist. It's not a conspiracy, but it is a fear that you could push some rubbish that might be in here, either dirt or rust or whatever, back into the ABS module and possibly cause damage. I'm going to say, that's something you can do at your own risk. I personally, if you really are afraid of doing that, just pop this cap off, make sure you crack the bleeder. The problem is you're going to have to go through the bleeding process of your braking system when you do that, which can't be a bad thing anyway, especially if your brake fluid's old. It can't hurt to change it anyway. So, but yeah, do that at your own discretion. It's probably not a bad idea to do, but also probably not necessary. Majority of the time when you go to the garage, they don't do that. They don't want to have to sell the customer additional services. So they just squeeze them in and don't worry about it. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and button this up. I'm going to go ahead and make sure these fasteners in the back here are nice and tight. There is a torquing spec on that. I'd say Google it if you're not sure, if you are concerned about it. And if you have a torque wrench, you can go ahead and take care of that. Otherwise, as far as the rest of the stuff goes, it's basically just reassembly. I'm going to go ahead and take this lug nut off here, and then we will torque on our wheel here momentarily. So let me go ahead and grab a extension breaker ratcheting bar, and we'll tighten those up and then be right back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten that back up here and get that snugged up and get that taken care of. The bracket just got a little bit of leverage here. Get that on there and make sure that's tight. Like I said, I'm sure, once again, not to be a broken record, there is a torquing spec. I use common sense. Never been an issue for me before. Okay, we know those are tight. That's snugged up. Now, that should be pretty much it. Go ahead and straighten this wheel back out here. Make sure you pump up the brakes. It's extremely important to get in and pump the brakes before you even think about putting it in gear. Otherwise, you're going to take out your neighbor's fence because you have to fill up that room in the piston that is right now got gap because we compressed the piston in, so it needs to come back in and touch the pads again, and it takes a couple pumps of the brake before it fills up that gap. So basically saying you won't have any brakes until you do that. So do that and then follow the break-in procedure that PowerStop recommends. I will try to remember to post a picture of that somewhere in this video clip, and we'll go ahead and torque our wheel, put that back on here, and we'll be back here in a couple minutes. Okay, we got everything buttoned up. Everything's put back together, torqued down, and ready to put the wheel back on. I went in the vehicle and went ahead and pumped up my brakes, checked the fluid level, and retightened the cap on the reservoir for the brake, made sure it was topped off, and we'll go ahead and get this wheel put back on. Okay, let's go ahead and get this wheel thrown back on. Boy. I could be wrong, once again, Google search it. Pretty sure the torque specs for these would be 89 foot-pounds, I believe. You could also check your owner's manual too. I'm sure that'll give you some insight on what it should be. I run them down semi-tight with the impact, and then once I do that, I go back over them with the torque wrench. These ones are a little tricky because these lug nuts are really small, and you got to really go deep inside this wheel cavern here to get to it. It's just one of them things you just got to be patient with. I will say these brakes look really snazzy on here. A little disappointed I wasn't able to use the new boots and everything, but on the flip side, I mean, for all I know, I was installing them wrong too, so I can't necessarily 100% blame them for sending incorrect boots for this caliper setup, but it definitely looked weird and I didn't like the way it sealed. So noise alert. And like I said, that's not on there very tight. I will go back on there and snug these guys with a torque wrench. I'm going to go, after I let the vehicle down, I'm going to go do the driving procedure for the PowerStop as far as the different types of stopping and not coming to a complete stop, but slowing down from 40 a few times, I believe I saw in there. So go ahead and do all that and make sure that the everything is in good shape there, and then ship it. Like I said, wouldn't it be a bad idea to go back maybe in a few days and just double check the torque on your lug nuts if you want to make sure you're playing things safe. But I hope this video helps. I am looking forward to see how the PowerStop brakes are going to work, and I'll go ahead and upload a video here in a few months and let you know how they're doing and how they're performing, and give you my product review on them. So hope this helps somebody out. Thank you so much for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next video, guys.